I think you've described on numerous occasions so much of what we're seeing acted out, whether it's in theological debates or in violence. You've described these as kind of intra-Muslim debates, and that this is really the center of the action. This is really what's going on, the competition for Muslim opinion. And the things that we outsiders look at, and certainly on September 11th saw in a horrible reality, are in fact not really the focus of where these debates in the Muslim world are going. It is about dominance of ideas and political movements trying to capture the imagination of Muslim followers around the world. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on that idea.
Yeah, I think that to fully understand Al-Qaeda, a movement like Al-Qaeda, you really have to, and Islamists in general, these are movements that are ultimately about getting to power, about dominating societies, dominating the resources of societies, dominating the way Islam is interpreted and actually applied in Muslim societies primarily. And in Al-Qaeda, as an example, you see very clearly that the Islamist experience of the 1980s and 1990s was one where Islamic political movements tried to confront the state, the Arab states. The principal examples here are Algeria and Egypt. In each of these instances, Islamists did not come to power through elections. They were not permitted to win through elections. They turned to violent means against the state. They failed. These states, whether it's Algeria or Egypt, are extremely powerful, and they have unbelievably harsh means at their disposal, where they torture people, they torture families of individuals who are associated with Islamism. I mean, the stories are horrific. The experience of Islamists, and including members of Al-Qaeda, was that you cannot topple these regimes. So we have to think of other ways of toppling them and of radicalizing Muslim populations against these regimes. So one way of doing this is to, in fact, attack the patron of these regimes, America. They describe America as a snake, and that if you cut the head of the snake off, the snake will writhe in ways that will make regimes very uncertain in the region, America will engage in forms of violence against Arab and Muslim societies that will lead to this radicalization. So they seek to drag the United States and European countries into this process of coming to power that they wish to fulfill. They want to dominate, and they will go to any length to do so. And I think 9/11 has to be understood as part of that attempt of movements like this to gain power in the Muslim world.
Well, from that point of view, one can see 9/11 as an extremely effective attack, reaching into the heart of the United States, devastating consequences, unexpectedly hitting where really no attack was expected. So in that sense, it has an enormous impact in furthering their message that they can deliver, they can be powerful,
yes,
and that they can shake the United States at its core.
Yes. It has been, actually. I think that 9/11, from many respects, has been, at least from Al-Qaeda's perspective, has been a success in that it has led to the United States doing certain things in the Muslim world and confirming to Muslim populations the version of how the world works, the version of Al-Qaeda's version of how the world works. So Al-Qaeda's version of how the world works is that the Muslims are under attack by the West constantly, whether culturally, economically, militarily. The West is only interested in taking the resources of the Muslim world and controlling these resources, and will go to any length to do so, so that and that the West, and specifically the United States, keeps these puppet regimes in power in order to control and exploit these resources for the benefit of the West and to the detriment of Muslims. But where Al-Qaeda has failed dismally is the bit of their ideology that says, well, this is what you need to do, Muslims, to change the world. We describe it accurately, we describe the way the world works, but what you need to do now is to privatize violence. Every Muslim has an individual duty to take upon himself or herself the means to engage in violence against Americans, against Jews, against the regimes themselves, in order to effect this change. in the Arab and Muslim world. That, I think, and I know, most Muslims have shied away from and have rejected. And these tactics, these violent tactics that Al-Qaeda has pushed and has advocated, have often led to the death of other Muslims, primarily the death of other Muslims. You know, you see this in examples, for instance, in that very famous attack in the hotel in Amman, Jordan, where a wedding party where only Muslims were present. A suicide bomber, two suicide bombers, but only one, I believe, detonated himself. Killed, you know, an entire, many members of a wedding party, of a Muslim wedding party. This kind of led to an extreme aversion to Al-Qaeda's tactics, and has led to the ebbing of people's fascination with Al-Qaeda. Its ability to inflict violence on other Muslims, I think, is its Achilles heel.